Hey everybody, here is a almost exactly 1 week update on our Vendee Globe final leg. So as you may recall, we started down here, not too far north of the equator, well, 7 degrees north. And so we've spent basically the first 6 days dealing with the fact that, as we always knew would be the case, the trade winds blow pretty much from the direction of France. They are consistently northeasterly, and therefore our destination is pretty much directly upwind. The fleet ended up splitting into kind of two groups, really. Let me think. So Jerome and Gaz and a stranger called JL took the maximum VMC option and were basically pointing as high as they could and beating hard against the trade winds. Again, you can't head straight for France because that's pretty much where the trade wind is coming from, but they're on a high starboard tack and just beating up to get as much upwind and as short a course distance as they could. Joe and I and a stranger called Plam took an approach. This was partially planned, partially improvised on my part, I've got to say. Took an approach which is favoured by the real sailors, which is to keep west throughout the trade winds. Don't try and beat hard into the trade winds, but kind of reach across them, get up past what they call the horse latitudes, where the prevailing wind switches from northeasterly to westerly, and then ride the westerlies across to France. That's all very well, you get good boat speed, but so what I found was, obviously I was hundreds and hundreds of, I'm now about 500 nautical miles downwind of people like Jerome and Gaz. But the boat, I failed to get the boat speed advantage out of that I should. In theory, I guess, in this nice foiling boat, going on a beam reach instead of beating hard into the wind, I should have had a pretty major, I should have got north much faster than they did. And as it is, I am way downwind of them and further from the destination, but I'm not as much further north of them as I should have been. So the beginning did not go terribly well for me, but we've just reached the interesting part where we find out which strategy is going to pay off better. Because Joe and I... so this guy Plam is going for the completely northerly route. We'll see if he is right about that. But this morning, Sunday morning, because you see the problem is, right, I went as far pretty much as straight north as fast as I could, and that was all very well in the trade winds, and it's all very well coming around this high pressure that I was trying to go around and Jerome and co were trying to go through. But of course, eventually the problem is you end up in the opposite problem to the trade winds, which is that the wind is dead behind you, and then you're in the same problem. You have to run, which is also slow. So I finally ended up in a position where the wind speed, basically the wind was pretty low as it came round, and then I kept going north. The wind finally got up to about 20 knots, which I figured was high enough, because you see we are due to have this hugely powerful storm coming in from the northwest Atlantic. So the further north we go, the more wind we'll get. But again, it continues to be the case that the further north we go, the longer the course we make for ourselves. So I finally figured I'd gone far enough north. 23 knots, pretty good wind. So I'm now on a very broad... reach, falling a bit short of the destination. I would ideally actually be even further downwind, but then I'll slow right down. So the current situation is that is that Jerome? No, that's Jerome. So Jerome still holds the first place for being closest to the finishing line, 1,400 nautical miles. But the problem Jerome has is that he's bang in the middle of the high pressure that's been here all week between the trade winds and the North Atlantic, so the horse latitudes. So he is completely becalmed in 1.5 knots, whereas I, for example, here am about 200 nautical miles behind him in terms of distance to destination, but I'm doing a pretty decent 12.8 knots, 13 knots at times, on a broad reach. So that's the trade we've made. He's travelled 200, well, God knows, travel distance, probably much less, but he's 200 metres close to the finish line. I've got wind and he hasn't. So it's, in the immediate future, it will come down to how quickly the high pressure either moves, changes, or Jerome manages to drag himself out of it, versus how much gain can Joe and I make. Joe's not shown on the map right now, but he's basically on exactly the same course as me, but ahead of me by 50 or 100 nautical miles. So it's not looking good for me beating Joe. What I'm rooting for is, I guess, can Joe and I beat Gaz and Jerome? So that's my update. The real life fleet has passed us, perhaps unsurprisingly. They're due in on Wednesday at some point, so I suppose we definitely won't catch up with them. So it'll be I guess it will be at least another week for us. Okay, that's it. Wish us luck. Oh, I left my foils extended again. I just retracted the wrong foil. Nope, that's the right foil. Yeah, so wish me luck. Or wish Jerome and Gaz luck, depending on your preferences. See you later.